Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit of the rationale to our first webinar and welcome Louise to the talk. And I'm also going to welcome Paul as well and allow him to introduce himself. The webinar is recorded, so after this we'll be sharing it widely for different people as well and different organisations. So firstly, welcome to the first series of the P2P webinars. This is going to be focusing on early childhood and play through an integrated approach. We're going to make some reference to a P2P report that was produced earlier this year, and this was born out of a lot of policy work, collaboration with the Alliance for Children and University of Winchester that I'm part of. And from this, we really were focusing on play and the importance of play in communities. And as we all know, that has really gained momentum through Play England and lots of other organisations. So what we wanted to do with this webinar is really think about how we can make that report, that P2P report that's open access, you can download it. How do we kind of make that come alive? And what we wanted to do was create some webinars and invite some key speakers to come in and share their expertise in their own organisations about the value of play. One of the things that I would like to do just initially is to think about the P2P report. And we had lots of recommendations. We had recommendations to government, but we also had recommendations that we put forward for local authorities and local communities. And there's a couple, we had 8 in total, and there's a couple that really speaks to tonight's talk with Louise. So I'm just going to share that. And then just give you a little bit background after that in terms of a bit more thinking around where this came about in terms of Alliance for Children. So for tonight, we're really thinking about play in terms of prioritising play through cross-sector collaboration. We're thinking about play as a fundamental aspect of childhood development and lifelong learning within multi-professional projects, thinking about community projects that you may have come across, thinking about opportunities for time in communities where we can engage in play, recognizing and embracing the mental, physical, social, and developmental benefits of play across the lifespan. Another key aspect that really speaks to tonight is thinking also about family engagement and parental engagement and play. And this is really about thinking about initiatives encouraging parental intergenerational involvement in the promotion of play. And this can be done through the provision of engaging activities, thinking about how we can go back to our local authorities, thinking about community spaces, and really thinking about the resources and opportunities that reach each milestone of a child through to kind of adolescence as we allow them to engage in play. We're also thinking about creating, establishing and extending a wide variety of early educational programs, drawing on principles within health, psychology and play therapy for families that value play, thinking about calm, restorative play to actively engage play. And we're very fortunate to be able to listen to Louise talking about health and play, if you like, and also doing it in a slightly different way because she's talking about food and play, but not in the way that perhaps we traditionally think about food and play. We certainly are not talking about sensory engagement with food through play. We're talking about healthy messages and really widening the lens about not only why food and nutrition is important for child development, but how we can do this in a playful way. And sort of thinking about that a bit wider, that's been part of some of my work, working at the University of Winchester, but also with my work as co-lead of the Alliance for Children. And on that note, I'm really happy to welcome Paul Wright, who is the CEO of Alliance for Children. And he has been firmly embedded in multiple working groups from the early years through to nutrition, physical activity. So I think we're kind of crossing paths in terms of those working groups. So welcome, Paul. I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's fantastic that we've got the webinar. And thank you, Louise, for being the first as well, which is fabulous. And I think, as you say, it crosses those different areas. And we are in a situation where certainly there's big changes in schools in terms of food. We've got obviously the new school breakfasts. There's going to be a rollout to universal credit. Universal credit in terms of free school meals. There's the new school food standards. We're helping there's the Alliance for Children to look at a new school food inquiry that's just beginning with the APPG on school food. So there's lots going on. So I won't go into too much, but we've had a busy week. We've been to Downing Street twice this week. So yeah, it's been good. There's always good stuff going on, and we are definitely a growing group. So it's excellent. Thank you very much. I'll pass you back.
Thank you, Paul. And if you'd like to know more about the Alliance for Children, we've got a great website that we will share with you. And please get into contact with myself. And I'm also happy to share the link as well, because as Paul said, there's some lots of exciting stuff going on. And as part of the early years working group, Louise has come on board and we've had many conversations. And she's going to share her work with us tonight in regards to Tiny Tums. So I'll pass over to you, Louise. Louise has developed a range of characters, haven't you? Tiny Tum characters, and these make up a team. She'll be talking about her role as a nutritional therapist, but also as an early years consultant and award-winning author. So she's kind of bringing in the idea of characters with stories and thinking about that in terms of food as well. And this ranges, and the body, so ranging from Billy Bones to Captain Red Pepper Pants, each one of them having a role to play in supporting and shaping children's health. And through her work in early years, Louise encourages children to get actively involved and engage in their own bodies, health and well-being. And I think that's what's really important, is often we talk about children's development, engaging in play and education, but we kind of go from A to C or A to D, but we miss out B. And it's really thinking about children, empowering children and enabling children to make sense of their own foods, their own body, and their own sense of self, and a deeper connection together about what shapes their, holistic development. So welcome, Louise, and thank you for being our guest tonight.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to attempt to share this worked in practice. So hopefully this will work now. There we go. Hopefully now everybody can see the slides.
Perfect. Yeah.
Good, thank you, because I can't see you now. So I will just plow on. So when I first heard about doing this, I thought, oh, I don't really do play. How can I do a webinar when I don't really focus on play? And then we had a conversation and I thought, oh, actually I do, but I was thinking of play far too literally. And I think that's what we might tend to do at times. And when I realized what I do in my work, I thought actually play is a huge part of it in everyday actions and conversations and the work that I do. I was just being too literal. So hopefully that will make sense when we go through. So what I don't know if you have a box covering past. Let me cover that. So I'm going to do a very quick introduction. Amanda did a nice introduction to me. Do a very quick introduction, and then we're going to look at the role of food in the early years, the real role of food in the early years, not the thing that's generally discussed. I go quite a lot deeper at the real impact, and then look at the role of food and play, and that's not filling some maracas with dry pasta and shaking them around. It's not that kind of food and play. It will make sense when we go through, but it's about embedding that playful language and narrative into everyday conversations, so that actually when we talk about food, biology, nutrition, healthy eating, it's just very natural and organic. And it's not something that we do from time to time because it's in the EYFS or it's in Key Stage 1 or we should talk about it. It's just happening. And then by osmosis, everybody starts to absorb information naturally. And that causes a ripple effect. And all we ever want to do is cause a ripple, because with that ripple, we just take people with us on that journey, and that increases. And then we're going to share some resources of things that I do. I do quite a lot of things that are shareable for free, and then quite exciting in terms of what's coming next in my world. So I am a nutritional therapist. I am an author on child health with my book, How Food Shapes Your Child, which came about basically as a parent for other parents, and then accidentally led me into early years. It was a complete accidental journey. I never intended working in the early years sector, but the book was picked up. I was keynote speaking off the back of it quite early on after publication, and then just kind of fell into becoming an early years consultant, which is a happy accident 8 years on, I have to say. Um, Being an early years consultant is great because I get to work with absolutely amazing nurseries and amazing education providers who allow me to, do course content, embed knowledge into apprenticeship frameworks, get information out there that wouldn't be out there otherwise. But I know that that's not going to get to everybody. And part of me has always had this real big urge to spread this message to every possible child and every possible family, because we know the real impact of the health and wealth divide, and we know the real impact of food deprivation. There's lots of work being done around that, which is amazing. But what we really need to do is get the information out there so that people understand food. Because what often happens with nutrition and health campaigns is that people feel blamed, they feel shamed, they feel judged. And actually, my message is just, let's make sure that everybody's educated and informed about food, and then we're hopefully all on the same page. And there's not this kind of divide, because nutrition is one of those words that you say that to somebody and you could see them switch off because they think they're going to be preached to, or they're going to be judged, or they're going to be lectured to. So that's my campaigning, partly now through joining the Alliance for Children, but also prior to that is to try to get messages out to many in a non-judgmental, fun and educational way. So what I do in my day-to-day work is menu development. So I love food, constantly talking or thinking of eating food. So I do recipe creation and menu development for nurseries and catering providers, so that we know that the food that children are getting is not just a balanced plate, but it is supporting biological foundations. I do staff training because a good menu is no good if nobody understands why it's good. So if something's on there, everybody should understand exactly why it's on there and what it does. Policy writing, because there's lots of policies in the early years. So making sure that everybody is compliant with what they should be compliant with. And then, as I say, creating educational content so that those messages are embedded into induction training, apprenticeships, CPD courses, and then my campaigns, which I'll share in a moment. So I do have a team. They're not real, but I treat them as if they're real. They are my team. I think my family do get slightly concerned about my interactions with them from time to time, but I do have a team of characters who help to bring Food Journey to life for the companies that I work with, for the children. They each have a role to play. So we're going to focus a little bit on Captain Red Pepper Pants because he's the one who had a campaign. So a lot of the resources at the back end of this presentation are from Captain's campaign, which was mid to late last year. So each of the characters has a role, and they each will have a campaign in time, which will be leading a different narrative on child health. So with Captain Red Pepper Pants, it was about food language. The next one is Inspector Bananas, who's about peeling back the truth. And that's where we look at what's really in our food, what's really marketed to children, what real impact is that having. So they're my main team. But I really want to make biology fun, and children are amazing at understanding their own bodies and their really interested in their own bodies. And I think sometimes we think, oh, we can't teach biology to 3 and 4 year olds. We can't have those conversations. Why do we can't talk about neurons and muscles and brains with very young children? But actually, we can if they look like this. Because they make it fun and they make it relevant, and it's not frightening. It's not an anatomical drawing. It's very not accurate if you look too closely. But they are just to make fun. So I want to make sure that we have everyday connections to our biology, because when I started out in nutrition, I was a personal trainer, and every single client that I worked with had a disconnect to their body, a disconnect to their biology. They worked against and not with their body. So they would try to see me 2 times a week to punish themselves to make up for the rest of the week. And that's not how our bodies work. Every day, every little action has a consequence. We don't undo a bad diet by doing an hour or so of exercise. So we've got a generation of people that feel like this disconnect with their body. We've got a diet culture which has fueled a lot of that. I grew up with that diet culture, thankfully did not fall prey to it because it's very damaging. But we have a disconnect. Children don't need to grow up into that disconnect, but when we see a bit later on, they are growing up in a very unhealthy and obesogenic environment, which is what I'll cover at the very end because that's the next campaign. But we can involve children in biology. We can have everyday connections and conversations so that children are not scared of their body, but they're aware of it and they're in tune with it. So they have that connection. And food is the one thing that has an impact on us every day. And it has an impact in the immediate. So if you eat something, you'll immediately feel different. You could just literally just feel full from eating, or you could feel a bit icky because it wasn't the best food, or it could make you feel a bit like you've got too much energy because it was high sugar, or it could make you feel really just content because it was just about right and it just filled you up and you were quite satisfied and you can move on. But it has an immediate impact on you. It also has a sort of a short-term impact. So a few hours later, if you had a lot of sugar, you'll suddenly have a crash, and that will have an emotional as well as a sort of physiological effect. So you'll feel the sort of the blood sugar crash, you'll feel a bit irritable and a bit, ugh. But you'll also feel a bit sort of sad, perhaps, because a lot of people feel sad when their blood sugar crashes, or just agitated and not know what to do with yourself. So that's the kind of medium impact. And then food has a long-term impact. So the food we eat, especially in childhood, nothing is momentary. So what we do and the things we eat in childhood not only have that immediate and short and medium-term impact, but they have a long-term impact. So in childhood, we are making longer-term impact than just in the here and now. When we feed a child, we're not just filling them up, we're shaping their biology and we're shaping their food environment. So having these conversations and involving children is really, really important. So this is my other team who helps me to do that. So this is an ever-growing team because I keep thinking of new body parts that we could have. The new one is going to be Iris, the eye. So we have these characters who help to bring this biology to life. Now, I don't know if you can see me because I can't see me, but if you can see me, I'm now joined by Billy Bones, who's one of my characters. But if you can't see me, I'll put him down because that fuels my family's opinion of me, and my characters. So we have these health characters who are Emma Emotion, who helps to teach children about our feelings and how feelings are normal, but how they fluctuate and how food impacts on that fluctuation and how it can help us to feel calm and sleepy, or it can actually make us feel quite irritated and grumpy because food has that direct impact on our emotions. And then we use Billy Bones and Mighty Muscle to talk about moving. Play is a big part of moving because we don't like to say exercise because already at a young age, some children are against that word. It's scary, it's intimidating, it makes them anxious. Not all, but some. So Billy Bones, Mighty Muscles, they help us move. How do we, when we're sitting, what muscles can we feel? What bones can we see? What are you doing now? How is that food helping you? How is that helping you build your bones? That food you're eating now is helping you to help you move when we move away from the table. So we're bringing the characters into everyday conversations, mostly at the table. So this meal we're eating is helping our brain, etc. There's Bessie Brain, and Doris and Norris neurons. So I won't go through them all. There's a lot of them, but you can hopefully see how they bring food to life and biology to life with their different. That's Gus the Guts, if you're wondering what he is. He is a gut, and he's very, very amazing. And then I have Manny Mushroom and Nanny Broccolina sprouts with, because in the early years, I work with nurseries, but childminders and nannies and mannies are not grouped in with nurseries. So I have characters designed especially for those who work in sort of smaller groups or on their own. So these are Manny Mushroom and Nanny Broccoli sprouts with, who will help with the mannies and nannies and childminders out there. So that's my team. Let's look at the role of food in the early years. So there's a lot of generic nutrition advice out there for early years, and a lot of it focuses on portion sizes. And a lot of the portion sizes send me a bit demented, because they'll have pictures of a fist. I don't know if you can see me. I'm making a fist if you can. But whose fist? There's a very difference between my fist and my husband's fist, and a child's fist and my fist. So it's a bit ambiguous. Healthy balanced diet, again, is ambiguous. What's a healthy balanced diet to one person might not be to me. Macronutrients, they'll talk about macronutrients, but who really understands macronutrients? Who understands what they mean and why are they important? The Eat Well plate is often used as advice, but actually is not suitable for under twos. So in the early years, a large percentage of children are under two. So it's confusing to navigate. And of course, we talk about sugar and salt, but early years nutrition is so much more than that. The real impact of early years nutrition, we are laying biological foundations. We have one opportunity in early childhood to lay down biological foundations that need to then last us a lifetime. So we are literally building a brain, and we know the fastest pace of brain growth is in the 0 to 3 window, and that's the time when we have this really unique window of opportunity to influence maximum brain potential. It's at that time where Doris and Norris are at their most active, the neurons. But childhood is also about laying down skeletal foundations. We have a bit longer for this. Well, we know the brain isn't fully grown until much later, but we have that peak window of opportunity. But with bones, with Billy bones and skeletal foundations, childhood is, I consider it like a bone bank. We invest in our bones in childhood because we need them very much in later life. So childhood is the time where we can really build on that peak bone mass. So there's lots of biological foundations that we influence with food. But we also, and this is really important for my next child health campaign, we hugely influence taste preferences and habits. Now, one of my huge things that I just don't understand why it always happens is when sugar is introduced to extremely young children, especially at the time of weaning, because they have a blank canvas with children and their palate is completely not always receptive, but it's open to food. And as soon as we introduce sugary food, it's automatic that that's going to be the preference. So we've introduced something that we needn't have introduced. There's no nutritional benefit, no benefit at all to biological foundations, definitely no benefit to brain development. But we've introduced it. Normally, we've introduced it because we're excited about it, because we like it and we think it's going to be nice to share. It's done with love. It's always done with love. Nice to share something with a child because we know they're going to like it. But palate development then preferences that food because it's sweet and it's designed to be preferenced over other foods. And then we can start to influence habits as well. So taste preferences and habits all take shape before the child starts school. So if we are, for example, giving pudding, this is something I would take away in early years. After every single meal, we have a pudding or we have something sweet. That's a preference, which is actually then a neural connection. So it's not just let's have a pudding. It's actually an expectation of pudding, because the brain is expecting it, because the habit has been formed, because that preference has been formed. So it then becomes a need for it rather than a desire. And there is no nutritional need for it. It's just been something that's been introduced and then it's taken shape as a habit and a behavior. And we can do all of that before the age of 5. And then obviously we all know if we ever tried to break a habit, it's very difficult, but children don't understand why they should break a habit and why should they understand that? Because that's how their brain's been wired to form these preferences and habits. And then another really important thing that we do in the early years with food is we have a connection to self, which is that understanding of food and that understanding of how we feel with food and what impact food and movement is equally as important in the early years. We have that connection to ourselves, because you will know if you have ever sort of gone down a road of having a lot of ultra processed food or a lot of sugary foods, you lose a lot of the sort of sensory things that come with food. When I've worked with clients before, they've kind of come off those foods, had something like a banana or a carrot, and they've been like, God, that really tastes amazing. I've lost the sense of taste of food because the food I was eating was so synthetic. So that then when we have that connection with natural foods, it triggers all sorts of hormonal responses and natural dopamine responses. And it feels so different to the synthetic foods and the synthetic version of those foods. So we lose that connection, and that's really important to establish that connection and for children to have that connection to themselves. So these are the biological foundations, summarized: building a brain, building a skeleton, oral health, because milk teeth don't just come and go. The milk teeth are the foundations for the adult teeth. So and we know there are huge levels of oral health issues within children in the UK. We know it's still the leading cause of children aged between 6 and 10 going in for a hospital admission is to have a tooth extracted. We know that milk teeth are not strong. So when we have all this sugary and ultra processed foods and a lack of chewing due to a soft diet because of ultra processed foods, there's all manner of oral health implications that come with that. But that doesn't disappear when the milk teeth go. That's the foundations for the adult teeth. So the foundations for the adult teeth have been laid because of that early food intake in the 0 to 5 window, because oral health is definitely not just about brushing teeth. So we're laying health foundations, not just in the brain and the skeleton, but the gut microbiome. We're laying the foundations in those early years for future health outcomes. And we're shaping taste preferences and food behaviors and that physical and emotional well-being. So this is one example of how I always like to use this as an example because it's very easy to interpret. So osteoporosis has been called a pediatric disease with geriatric consequences. So we lay the foundations in the early years. We pay the price in the later years. That's one example. I won't go through. I need to hurry because let me check the time. I do tend to talk a lot. So currently there is some early years nutrition help and support. It's been enhanced last April, when we had the EYFS nutrition guidance come out. Other than that, there's Eat Better, Start Better, advice on the Eat Well plate, portion sizes, etc., etc. I haven't seen, and I have looked over the 8 years, any real reference to the impact of food in the early years with really clear explanations and really easy to access resources which enable people to make action. So I haven't seen, and I look regularly on, other than the work I do, menus saying we're building brains with these dishes, we're supporting emotional regulation with this menu. I haven't seen that, and that's my main aim is to have that as the norm across the early years and in schools. But we need to get it in the early years first because of that shaping the habits before age 5. So schools, of course, would be brilliant to have this in because of the reach of children, but we need to get it right in the early years first. So the role of food in play. As I say, I took this interpretation of play really literally and thought, I don't play, even though I'm surrounded obviously by characters all day long. So how I use my characters, and I have a lot of fun with my characters, and the messages that I try and get across in everyday actions and activities with my nurseries. So we use song and dance. Song and dance is one of the best ways for children to learn. It's a way we put actions in the song, so they have to physically move their limbs and move themselves, so they're moving physically without thinking it's an exercise or anything like that. But obviously it's really good for them to get up and move. I have lots of resources that I send to my nurseries with stickers. So all my characters, like Gus the Guts on a sticker or Billy Bones on a sticker. So if they've had a meal, at nursery and they've had a conversation about this yogurt in this dish is full of live bacteria. You might not say that to them, I might put them off. Is full of friendly armies for our gut health. And here's a sticker of Gus the Guts. They're going to get to their parents or their families, and they're going to say, I've got Gus the Guts because I had this and I fed my good tummy bugs, and now my tummy feels really strong. And it starts a conversation from a sticker. Everybody loves sticker. I have postcards of my characters, and on the back of them, it's little conversation prompts for the early years professionals to say, oh, we're eating today. It's how many colours can you spot? What's on your plate that's going to help your brain? So it's constant reinforcement, but it's in a fun way. And you could say that's play loosely, because we're using characters and we're having conversations about serious things, but in a fun way. And then, of course, we use story and rhyme. So young children don't learn through facts. You sit and talk to them about, did you know your brain? Did you know? They won't listen, and I don't blame them. But they will learn through sound and movement and repetition because they feel happy. And my song, particularly my Captain Red Pepper Pants song, is incredibly catchy and gets stuck in your head. So you can't help. My poor husband was walking to work down the Euston Road singing Captain Red Pepper Pants. He didn't realise, and because it really does get stuck in your head. But that's where things stick, and that's where song and dance really does excel, because you're getting messages across in a fun way without even really children realizing that they're learning. So with the resources that I'm just checking the time, with the resources that I will be sharing, we do have the pumpkin picnic patch, which was my autumn free resource for all my nurseries, which was a guide full of all about pumpkins, but with lots of pumpkin songs and actions, and the Tiny Tums song, which is always great with children because the last line, pumpkin curry, pumpkin stew, all that fibre helps you poo, and children love that. And I won't do the action if you can, I don't know if you can see me, but I won't do the action because it involves sort of squatting down and then jumping up again. But children love it. But children often can start to feel quite self-conscious about toilets and things like that. And it's only natural that they are able to talk about it, because we don't want children hiding tummy aches or anything like that. So being able to articulate through song and dance is really, really helpful. And also actions generally help if children are constipated because they're moving. But that's a side issue. So what we want is to extend this connection and familiarity into everyday actions, but to just have it feeling normal and natural. Like I say, not today we're talking about this, but just every day we're doing something where we're mentioning something to do with our body, something to do with what we're eating or how we're moving or how we're playing or how we're doing this and what's actually fueling that and how is that actually happening. So it's all natural and organic, because that will extend to the family as well. And that will have that ripple of what conversations we can have outside of the setting as well, in the family. And how does that ripple then continue to grow? So I put my little characters everywhere. So I put them into menus. So this is an example of a menu I'm working on for one of my nurseries, where it's got a little character each day. So it's got Marty Muscles, Roland Rainbow, Billy Bones, Emma Motion, Bessie Brain, on one for each day. And that changes through each week of the menu. So that on that day we're focusing on that, and that'll be the conversation for the day. That doesn't mean they have to do it on that day, but just it's there. They've got all the prompts, they've got the stickers, they've got the postcards, they've got the posters. If they want to just have a conversation, then everything's there for them to be able to do that. And that's just part of that natural flow, and that's visible for families to see as well. Oh, building brains today, and it becomes normal to think, oh yeah, food is linked to brain development, because we know it, but we don't talk about it, so we're not really embedding it. So these are my little postcards. They're my stickers, terrible pictures. I do apologise about that. And there's the gang. So I have lots of plushies and things which are great for nurseries, because I have them all made, especially in the UK, and they're all completely safe for children. They're quite nice for sensory because they're quite heavy and they're very robust. So they're really lovely to have for settings as well, in terms of just a nice thing to show this is a bone, etc. So they're really quite friendly. But one of the big things I've got into doing is through the campaigning that I'm doing, and that is where we use characters to bring stories to life through storytelling and animation. So I won't play it, but I do have the QR code in a bit later, so you can go away and do it. So last year, Captain Red Pepper Pants had a campaign all about this sort of header here. What if the problem isn't the food, but the story we've been told about it? So the animation, I'll share the QR code, you can watch it, was about a misinterpretation of food and how we hail certain foods as heroes, whereas other foods have to be endured. And it's always the unhealthier foods. I don't say good and bad foods because that just creates all other sorts of emotional food relationships of a different kind. Um, but there are foods that are better for us than others. But yet the ones that are heralded as rewards and treats and we bribe with them, they're never the vegetables. They're always the sweets and the cakes and the chocolate. So it's the way we talk about food that's the real impact and that's the real influence that we have as grown-ups. So these are just screenshots from the animation. And that's how the animation ended, which is leading on to the next animation. And the end line in this animation was, who are the real villains in our food landscape? We'll come back to that in a moment. So animation is a really nice way of sharing a message because you're able to get to children, but really the message is for the grown-ups because the grown-ups are the influencers, the decision makers, the ones who buy the food, the ones who, are making those decisions on food. So we need to get to the grown-ups as well. So this is in this animation, the vegetables weren't the villains, they were just badly cast. While children were told to endure their greens to earn a treat, junk food plays the hero, colourful, exciting, and everywhere you look. But what if the story is upside down? So that was the premise of the first animation, and basically is an indicative of food landscape. I don't if hopefully that will work. I got my husband to test it, so I'll keep it up there for a moment. So if you scan that QR code, you can go to Captain's campaign and watch the full animation, download the very catchy song, and go to the resource page where there's lots of resources. And I believe these slides will be shared with you as well, so you can get it from there too. So resources and what's next. So I can send over to Amanda the pumpkin patch picnic if anybody wants it. It's a full PDF of different activities. Very autumnal. I know it's not autumn anymore, but still, it's got lots of nice songs in there and things like that. And then following that QR code, you can get to Campton's campaign resources, which are another screenshot of what's in there. So these are linked to EYFS and Key Stage 1. So any activity also has a sort of adult guide. If you're a teacher and you're using it in a school, it's got like a lesson guide and it's got links over to Key Stage 1 in terms of what aspects it covers. If you're EYFS, then it again links over to EYFS. So there is lots of different resources. This one is for schools and educators. You can play it in an assembly and then it's got the packs for children to complete afterwards. You can sit back and have a cup of tea in a lesson while you play it for 6 minutes and then do the activity pack that goes with it. That one there for schools. Any of them can be used in schools as well. So this one is building your gut army with Gus the Guts, getting children to understand their tummies and the link with health, with our gut health. And the gut is so much more than digestion. So it's starting that awareness and connection to ourselves with Gus the Gut to download. And then we've got Emma Emotion and exploring food and feelings with her activity pack. And these are all completely free. So on the resource page, you can download anything and use anything for free. It's really important for me to do these campaigns because children today are growing up in an increasingly obesogenic environment. And in the time that I've focused on child health, those and will know through the Alliance for Children and the members in there and all the campaigning that's happening is because this generation of children have it extremely tough. It's an extremely difficult time to be a child. it's not just an obesogenic environment. There's all sorts of issues. I watched an amazing video within the group tonight on children and screens and social media, and the impact on, mental health and anxiety. And as a mum of a now 12-year-old, that side of things is more real for me. He has a phone, very closely monitored, but he has a phone. So it's, what new things do we have to deal with as parents that we didn't have to deal with before? I can only focus on what I focus on. So whilst I can think, oh, this is huge and it's terrifying, I try to narrow it down to an area of influence, which is food. And that whole screen issue is still very relevant to me, because what children see on their phones does impact, because they see high fat, sugar and salt foods. They see junk foods. They shouldn't have advertising in digital spaces aimed at children, but they do. Children are seeing these foods in their safe digital spaces as well. And we are influencing food behaviors as grown-ups with our own habits and our food language. And food manufacturers and food advertisers are fully aware of the impact that they have. So they know about child brain development, they know about hedonic hunger, they know about all the things that, when they put their adverts out there, they know what they're doing with them. But we are fueling that if we say certain foods are a treat, if we reward with certain foods, if we comfort with certain foods, if we bribe with certain foods, and if we do things out of habit. Oh, we always have pudding, or we always have that on a Friday. Because everything that we do is instilling that habit, because nothing's momentary in childhood. Everything we do when we feed a child, we're not just filling them up, we're activating all manner of neural activity, we're activating sensory pathways, we're activating things that become habits and learned behaviors and repeat behaviors. So we have this huge influence when we feed children. And that is in a rapid pace of brain growth. So we know the brain is growing, particularly between 0 and 3, at a really, really fast pace. But all through childhood, the brain and adolescence, the brain is incredibly influential, which is why we're now so concerned about social media, because the brain is still super influential through the adolescent years as well. And we have Doris and Norris back because we know that neural connectivity is at its peak in early childhood, and brains are at their most susceptible during early childhood. So we have the biggest influence on them in that time, because baby brains, early experiences shape them more powerfully than any other age in life. So if we do something early on, we've shaped something so powerfully that it's actually quite hard to undo. We know from trying to break a habit ourselves, it's really difficult. It's 20 times more difficult if that pattern's been established in early childhood. So it's really, really important that this nutrition and understanding and connection to self is established really early on, because we are influencing food patterns and food behaviors. So what's next? So I'm just check the time. Really quite excited because I have another child health campaign in the pipeline, in the planning stages, and it's not kept in red pepper pants this time. It's his mate, Inspector Banana, who is a police detective, and his motto is "Let's peel back the truth." So he is looking into what is the truth of our food landscape, what do children see, what are we feeding our children, and we have a villain, we have an antagonist, we have Sir Sly McGreedle of Greedle Enterprises, who is an advertising executive. Sorry if there are any advertisers watching, but they're in the food advertising space and they find loopholes to get adverts out there, because this happens. We know it happens. So the next animation will be all around. It'll be fun. It'll all be around food adverts and what children see and how we're being deceived with our foods. So would you like to be involved? Because it's just starting. So it's very much still in the planning stages. So hopefully I am now finished. I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully come back to you. Hopefully that's given a bit of a feel for. I'm very passionate about child health and nutrition and the role that food plays, because it's much deeper than I think we ever really give food credit for. So hopefully my characters, and here he is. If he wasn't visible, then he was here the whole time. Hopefully you can see that we do play. I just didn't really see it as play.
Ah, that was wonderful, Louise. Thank you so much.